The following programming is sponsored by Mark J. Bernstein. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or Beasley Media Group. Entrepreneur, author, and financial consultant Mark Bernstein helps high-performing entrepreneurial business owners create a vision for the future and follow through on their goals and intentions. Ange Honorato is a business growth strategist who blends psychology and business together to create conscious leaders and business owners who impact the world. Founders Forum is a radio show podcast sharing the real stories behind entrepreneurship as founders discover more about themselves while providing valuable lessons and some fun and entertainment for you. Now, here's Mark and Ange.
Good morning, America. How are you? I hope you're having a good day today. It's one of those other cloudy, cool days in Philadelphia today. I'm not sure where the spring went, but hopefully it's coming back next week. It appears to be. And hope wherever you're listening and whatever time it is of day that you're having a good morning, because morning's always good, even if it's in the evening. So with that, we were talking in our previous show that we recorded today about Acres of Diamonds, the book by Russell Conwell, who later went on to found Temple University and who gave thousands of lectures and the book has sold millions and millions of copies, a very famous story. And today we're having a guest who is a manufacturer, and we have gotten to know each other through our work together around the manufacturing business. I have a group called the Manufacturers Forward Focus Forum, and Tom has been a member of that, and we've been discussing a lot of information over the last few years about manufacturing, and it's kind of a think tank and problem-solving group and resource group. And in doing so, I was thinking about manufacturing. I was thinking about Acres of Diamonds because we went through a long period of time where the U.S. was exporting almost all of its manufacturing, offshoring. But now we're talking about reshoring. A lot of manufacturing is coming back to America, both because of, changing conditions, difficulties with imports, and also government incentives. So there's a lot of reason why manufacturing is coming back, and I thought we would talk about that a little bit as diamonds in our backyard kind of thing. And Ange, I think you have a little bit of information on that, and I want to ask Tom, and Jake Still is also in the audience, in the studio with us today. And maybe he'll have a thought about it as well.
Yeah, we're talking, before the show about, the fact that manufacturing is really kind of reshoring. And I think, coming at it from the lens where I sit from organizational design, executive recruitment, or just recruitment in general, talent attraction, we're seeing that really kind of amp up, despite sometimes what the data and the statistics say. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. So, I'm love to get your perspective on that, Tom, being in it every day. Or what we seeing, is it really happening? And we're getting, requests for more hires. And how's that translating in your world?
So let me introduce Tom real quick before we do that. This is Tom Lawton, president and owner of TESCO, the Eastern Specialty Company and affiliated companies. I'll let you talk, and then I'll tell you more about his biography.
Okay. Good morning, guys. So, Ange, we are definitely seeing reshoring. We're definitely seeing a resurgence. How large a resurgence, we could talk about that all day. But we're seeing an increase in manufacturing and a new interest in manufacturing. I have always been a huge believer in local manufacturing because we have companies in the U.S. We have 3 manufacturing facilities here. Our headquarters are in Bucks County, just outside of Philadelphia. We have a large facility in Ohio, another one in Texas. But then we also have a facility in Montreal and a facility in the Philippines. We are not bringing product from them to here. We are manufacturing in Montreal for our Canadian customers. We are manufacturing in the Philippines for our Philippine and Far Eastern customers. It never made sense to me as people were starting to offshore through the 80s and the 90s that you were going to take a relatively inexpensive product and you were going to bring that halfway around the world. Long, vulnerable supply chains are just that. They're long and they're vulnerable. Unfortunately, as a worldwide community, we saw supply chains break dramatically. And that potential was always there, and in smaller ways that always occurred. So you couldn't do the kind of planning that you can do when you have domestic or local manufacturing. We tell our procurement guys, if you can get in a car and be at that vendor within half an hour, that's a great vendor. Because now if I'm having a problem, I can call Mark and say, Mark, we're having an issue. We've been buying from you for 10 years, but we've got an issue on the floor. can you and one of your engineers get over here right away? Or we can go and visit them. We can be in Angie's facility in less than an hour. We can be in Jake's facility in less than an hour. We tell them if they have to get on a plane to see a vendor, it's not as good. And if they need a passport, it's not a vendor. We really don't want to do that because every border, even the border between the U.S. and Canada, as easy as that one is, even there, on occasion, we'll be sending something back and forth, something that we've sent back and forth for years and years because we use common parts in both places, so I might be short. They may try and send us some just to tide us over. I would say about once a year, a shipment gets held up for an inexplicable reason. New customs guy didn't know the paperwork, and all of a sudden you've got a 2-day delay where you've been doing it for 10 years and you've never had a delay with that box of stuff. So I believe in domestic manufacturing, and I think that what the pandemic showed us many, many things. There's still many lessons I'm sure that we have to learn from it, but one of them is that long, vulnerable supply chains are not a good idea for manufacturing and not really a good idea if you're selling to the consumer because you can't sell what you don't have. It's a real problem. I think that we've learned that. We may forget it.
Yeah, let's hope not.
Let's hope not. But manufacturing, there is a much greater interest in manufacturing. Absolutely. And we're trying to, ironically, people are still, we talked about this before the show, manufacturing is a career. Oh, that's a career. Yeah, it's a great career. It's great paying jobs. It's a wonderful place to be, and you're making things. Once upon a time, as a company, we were doing product design for companies, and we were doing a lot of consulting for companies. And we made a very deliberate transition, saying, "Well, we don't want to be what we call the paper tiger. We wanted to make things," and it's very fulfilling.
And hence the reshoring. And we'll talk more because I know in your company you've done a lot of things to bring manufacturing more local in-house and more local, and maybe we can get to that because I know that's been one of your challenges. So I mentioned Tom Lawton is president of TESCO, the Eastern Specialty Company. He founded his company in 1984, and through new product development and strategic acquisitions, TESCO now includes Canop Inc., Mezzarina Limited, Power Measurements Inc., and Nighthawk. And under his leadership, TESCO has been at the forefront of innovation in AMI technologies and EVSE charging within the electric metering industry. He's a graduate of MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. My tongue's a little tied this morning. And Tom actively speaks at meter schools and utility conferences. He's contributed to the latest edition of the Handbook of Electricity Metering and is a member of ANSI C12 metering standards committees. Tom is on other boards, and he's an advisor to a lot of people. He's really somebody who knows a lot about manufacturing. He's also an educator within his field, within his company, and does some things online and some different programs. And he's a pleasure to know and a pleasure to have on the show this morning. So thanks for being here, Tom. So tell us how you got started. I was interested in, not everybody, and we're basically the same generation, just comes out of high school and goes to MIT. So there was something in your background about that, how that came about. And then just talk about how you came to be where you are and how you founded the company in '84.
Okay. Well, I was very fortunate to be able to go to MIT back in the day. As we were talking beforehand, I was thinking study history at Princeton or Harvard or study engineering at MIT. Why those places? Aim high. Always aim high. Both of my parents were teachers. I'd heard about those types of places. Nobody in our family had ever been there. But I decided I didn't want to be a teacher, and that was all I could think of doing with a history degree. I love history, absolutely love it still, and I ironically enjoy teaching. But I felt as an engineer I could build things, and I could make things, and I wanted to pursue that. So I went to MIT. It was an amazing school to go to. You're with a lot of incredible people. And it was just wonderful. It opened up a lot of doors. It allowed me to do a lot of amazing things. One of the things I worked on ended up on a space shuttle. It was some really, really interesting things. I left school and was not interested in going on for a master's or a PhD. I wanted to get out there and I wanted to do stuff. So I also love to travel. So I got a job that did that. I joined Schlumberger. I worked in the oil industry. And I worked overseas for several years. It was a lot of fun, a lot of hard work. You would work 12 hours on, 12 hours off for 7 days a week when you weren't busy, and you worked a lot more when you were busy. Worked in some interesting countries, primarily I was in Africa. It was interesting. They paid you very well. They didn't expect you to last very long. It was a dangerous occupation, unfortunately. So I knew some people that did not get back home. But it was very fun. It was a very good education in the real world for a young person. Came back, started my business, had some friends from MIT. We all thought we were going to make robots. And by the time we were 30, we would retire as millionaires. That was the plan. Didn't quite work out that way.
It's a pretty common MIT dream, I think, right? But interesting. So that's how you got started. So I know there have been challenges along the way, and I know you're in your, TESCO is really, blossomed and is doing really well these days. What were some of the challenges you faced along the way, and what strengths did you have individually and as a company to deal with them?
So there were lots of challenges. I mean, we grew from literally one person with zero income, and last year we were a little over 250 people, and we are working on cracking 100 million here in the next couple of years. So it's been we've been very fortunate. But with all of that growth, you break the things that you built. Your infrastructure, your accounting systems, your inventory systems, your management styles. You break them all numerous times. And so you have to be willing to recognize that very early that, this system that we just spent all this time and effort. In the beginning, it wasn't a lot of money. It was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But we're going to have to replace that. And you start to learn to plan for the long term. We put in a phone system 25 years ago that was way more than what we needed, and everybody just laughed. They said, "What are you doing? You're overspending by 2 what you need." That phone system we still have and keep going because the next transition isn't going to be a phone system like we all grew up with. I'm really old, so.
Well, and to chime in on that is exactly what we're going through right now. Like we're a $4 or $5 million company, and we've done it a few times already. It's a completely new business every single time you grow. Yeah. So when you're at 10 million, different, 50 million, 100 million, we threw out different. Every single time.
Right. And
Jake, thanks for that. I just want to say, too, I know you might have a question or two for Tom later on. Feel free to chime in with a question because I know you're an active learner, and this is a guy with a ton of experience. Tom, you were going to say something else?
No, and then the other thing is we really didn't have the background to do what we did. So we were learning on the job. I could manage a bunch of rig hands on an oil rig, and when I took that management style back to the U.S., it really didn't work well. So we really were not trained as managers.
I have vivid pictures of what you mean by that.
Oh, yeah, you should have vivid pictures.
Especially in that time period.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep.
There wasn't a lot of conscious leadership conversation being tossed around.
Nope. So all the bad things that you can imagine, yep. All those bad mistakes, yep, we made them. So it was, that was difficult. So I've had to learn how to be a manager, how to be a supervisor, how to be a leader. We had to, I thought I had I had taken some basic courses at MIT. I thought I knew a little bit about a balance sheet and a P&L, but really you didn't. I had to learn about banking. I sat on a board for a local credit union for about 12 years just so I could learn from the other side of the table. What are bankers really looking for? So there was a lot of education. It's manufacturing and business in general is a very expensive education. It can be a very lucrative education in the end, but it's a very expensive education. We always joke about the school of hard knocks. They are hard and they are knocks.
One of the things I really like about you is I see myself as a lifelong learner, and all of us in the room are. And I think successful entrepreneurs, that seems to be one of the common traits as well, because things are always changing, and if you don't keep growing, you go backwards, the way I always look at that. So, hey, this is a great chance for a break. So we're going to have a minute commercial from our sponsor, TESCO, and we'll be back in a minute.
Great company.
Since 1904, TESCO, the Eastern Specialty Company, has been at the forefront of electric utility innovation. Based in our 19th century mill in Bristol, PA, where we work on cutting-edge 21st century technology for the smart grid of the future, we proudly uphold our 120-year legacy of manufacturing excellence and are a leading advocate for domestic manufacturing. We service electric utilities worldwide, providing the hardware and software for their meter service departments. Discover Discover a career with TESCO and join an exciting team at the heart of our smart grid and energy innovations of tomorrow. Visit TESCOmetering.com today for everything from entry-level possibilities to senior technician roles to a variety of engineering and professional positions. Tested, trusted, TESCO.
We're back on Founders Forum with our guest today, Tom Lawton. We have Jake Still of Junk Rescue in the room. We have Ange Honorado, and we have me. So with that, Ange, I'm going to give you the microphone.
Yeah, so we at this point in the show, Tom, we always love to talk a little bit about company culture. And I think you've given us a little bit of a glimpse in terms of how maybe you've developed your leadership style. Obviously, I think you mentioned you're celebrating your 40th year in business as well. So obviously, I'm assuming you've got a lot of long tenured folks. So just tell us a little bit about how has that culture evolved and how does that play into what we talked about earlier about how do you attract new talent? How are you preparing for succession planning? How are you educating people about the joys of manufacturing, really?
All great questions, and there'll be about an hour answer for each of them.
Yeah, we'll have you back 3 more times.
All right.
And I know you can do an hour, but we're going to do the abridged version of that.
So first, let's unpack that a little bit. Let's start with just the culture side of it. So one of the things we did a couple of years ago is we worked out a set of values. The set of values we have laminated on a card. I've got one in my wallet. Everybody gets one as a new employee. And that's the person, that's the company we want to be when we look in the mirror. And we tell people that all the time. If you're wondering what to do in a situation, look to that. That should at least give you guidance. Are we perfect about it? No. We're working on that every single day. Have we had to let people go over it? Yes, we have, because they really just weren't upholding those values. They were making it a difficult place to work in, and that's not what you're looking for. Life is way too short. So it's a very conscious decision as to what we put out there for those values, and that helps to frame the culture question. One of the things that we're known for, we're a manufacturer, right? So it's about getting things done. Whatever you do, Jake, you're a supervisor. Your group's supposed to get this many boxes out by the end of the month, by the end of the week, by the end of the day, and you're working on it, and you've got a problem. Well, now you're trying to think on your feet, and how do you overcome it? And that's the culture that we're trying to build, is how do you solve problems for yourselves, for your peers, because you got to be accountable. That's the hardest thing. Everybody thinks, oh, I'm accountable. Yeah, you're accountable to yourself. Oh, yeah, that means I'm accountable for the company. But if I'm not accountable for Jake, and I see that Jake is struggling, and hold on, yeah, I know I'm going to fall a little bit behind, but what can our team do to help him out? Because they just had a catastrophe over there, and they got to recover. So what can we do? So helping ourselves, helping our peers, and helping our customers. When the customer calls in with a completely unreasonable request, you don't just laugh. You may want to cry, but you try and figure out what can you do to help them out. You asked about planning for the future. We have a senior management team, but we also have what we call a young executive management team. Will these guys necessarily be taking over? Will the engineer be taking over as the senior VP of engineering? Maybe. He's a candidate. We're trying to groom him for that. We want to hire from within. We try very hard to hire from within and to train from within, because there's not a whole lot of people that you can bring in and are going to just hit the ground running. I was reading an article on the gentleman who started Starbucks, and he's been out and then back in, out and then back in a number of times. And the problem is not that he didn't hire really talented people to succeed him, but they didn't, as they put it, wear the green cloth. They weren't Starbucks at heart. They didn't live, eat, and breathe it.
By the way, Bill Gates hasn't left Microsoft. I was just reading the other day. He's still very involved too. So
Yep.
keeps coming back in. So
Yep.
to illustrate your point here.
So we want to hire from within. We want to promote from within. We want to groom them from within. So we have a young executive management team, and in there, we're doing a lot of the training that, frankly, I wish I had. We're trying to do a lot more mentoring. It's something that sounds so easy, but it's not. So Ange gets hired at our place, and I want the best person in her production cell to mentor her, not the guy that's always taking an extra 5 minutes at break time, et cetera, et cetera. I want her to be mentored by somebody, and that builds up the mentoree. The person who's doing the mentoring is being built up, as well as the person who is receiving it. So I'm very fortunate. I have 2 of my 4 sons. Shocked me a couple of years back, and first one and then the other said, Dad, I really want to join the business. And they were in, the one was a trained chef, a very good chef. And as he approached 30, he saw all his brothers doing things like cars and houses and getting married, and he was still living like a student and being treated in very much the same way. And he said, I can always cook, and he's great. He's phenomenal. He said, but this is not the career that I really thought it would be. So he came, and he's been doing great. He actually at this point, he's worked his way up through a couple of field positions and department positions at our place. He became the general manager up in Canada when our general manager retired back in 2019. And he loves it up there. In fact, he's engaged to a young lady from Quebec.
Very nice.
And then my youngest son came back to me. He had just risen actually to a director position for Saatchi & Saatchi in market research. He had worked his first several years in a utility. They had hired him as an intern. He went to school in New York. They had hired him as an intern, and then they hired him right out of school, and then Saatchi & Saatchi poached him. His background is in big data. His degree is in big data. Pretty apropos for the environment we are in. And
it's going to help those long, vulnerable supply chains, I bet.
Oh yeah, there's so much that he just does without even thinking that everybody else just says, "Wow."
Example of who, not how.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right. Exactly. His dream job, he's of the four. Everybody knows I took all the boys skiing when they were younger, taught them all how to ski, but he was the big skier. His dream job was to work for Vail. He told me, "Dad, I know I got the director job, but I'm going to leave it." I said, "Okay." I said, "I'm thinking of either I'm applying for this VP of the customer experience at Vail, or I'd like to come to work for you." And that just floored me. We had never talked about it. It had never been a thing. It wasn't a conversation around the dining room table ever. It was just not a thing. And his older brother had already joined us. But even then, I wasn't sure that was really a career for him. And then he said, "I want to do it." So then he called me at Christmas of 2019 and said, "I got the job at Vail." And I said, "Great. When do we move you?" And he said, "I'm going to work at TESCO."
Amazing. So we're going to talk a little bit about legacy in a minute. Before that, I want to ask you about something we talk a lot about, 3-year vision. So it's 2024, and we're in May of 2024. And if you were looking at May of 27, and we're looking back at the last 3 years, what would have to happen for you to feel that was a successful period in your business, but I want to ask in your life as well, because that's a big part of the picture at this point?
Yeah. Again, we've been very fortunate over the years. I'm getting to a point where I'm told I should think about retiring at some point. Maybe yes, maybe no. But there's a lot that I would like to accomplish.
I don't see you doing that too soon, but that's another story. But go ahead.
There's a lot that I would like to accomplish. Still, I'd like to bring the company over that $100 million mark. In fact, I see us going to 250. Will we do that in 3 years? No, we're not. We're probably not going to hit that 250 in 3 years, but we'll be well on our way. I'd like to also put the company into a much more company is in a much more secure position than it was 5 years ago, which was a much more secure position than it was 5 years before that. And I want to put it into that much better a position in 5 years. I've started to take more time off. My wife and I take a few more trips. We were in Antarctica last year. We're heading to the Arctic this year. She's going to come with me. We're going out to see our facility in the Philippines. She's going to come on that trip. I want to be able to take an afternoon and go golfing or go shooting, go fishing, do the things that I enjoy doing without feeling I have to be there because something's not gonna happen if I'm not there. I've been developing our senior management team, developing that next generation, and I want to start handing over more things to my sons and to those teams as well. So if we can be doing better on the bottom line, because that is really what it's all about, and we are continuing to do better. We have some goals. And I think that we're going to hit them. I think we're going to hit this year's goal. And each time we hit those bottom line goals, we put the company into a far better position. And in 3 years, I could actually thinking about winding back and not necessarily being there all day, every day.
You mentioned back when you were talking about culture, you mentioned trying to build a culture. I just wanted to point out to the audience that you're a guy that doesn't really try. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. This is my experience with you. So in terms of hitting these goals, and you have built the culture, of course, nothing's perfect. We're talking about that. Perfection's not scalable. But when you say you're going to do it, you do it. So, and there's a lot behind that. I know it wasn't always necessarily that way, but all your learning and all your growing over the years, you've been a great example of that. Having said that, there are some challenges there's challenges to hitting $250 million. There's challenges to turning over, leadership to a certain extent. There's challenges to secure the company a little bit better off. What challenges do you see, and what experiences and strengths do you bring to that to overcome those?
Well, I'm just too foolish to ever realize that we're beaten. So you just, you're never beaten until you don't get up.
Love that.
But you have to listen to the marketplace. The marketplace is so smart. You've got to be reinventing yourself all the time. Our company is nothing like it was 15 years ago, and it bears no resemblance to the company we were 30 years ago, and certainly not at all what we thought we were going to do when I started in 1984. So you've got to keep listening to the marketplace. When we do new products, you can't listen to the smartest guy in the room tell you that this is the new product that's going to be great unless he's been out in the marketplace and understands what's happening in your marketplace, because the marketplace will tell you in a hurry where you've missed, and you got to be ready to respond.
We're going into our lightning round of questions. We only have a minute or two left.
I know. So, well, there's so much learning that you bring. Tom, tell us, what about books? What's your favorite book right now or that you've ever read?
Oh,
impactful book.
Many books. I love to read. I'm reading all the time. Right now I'm reading Hampton Sides, The Voyage of the Jeanette, up in the Pole, because, again, we're going to the Arctic, so I've been doing a lot of Arctic reading. Before we went to the Antarctic, I did a ton of reading on the Antarctic. I've been studying. I will mix in business things. I really enjoy The Great Game of Business. It's a book, goes back to the 80s, but what I really like about it is the open book style of management and educating everybody in the company about the business so they understand why what they're doing is important. And our bonus system is highly structured around that. And we started that as a pilot in Bristol, and then we expanded it this year to every division in the company, and it's really good. So that's a book that I'm rereading again right now.
Tom, last but not least, and I promised to ask you this about your legacy. That has to do with your business, has to do with your sons, but it has to do with other things as well, I think. So let's talk about that for the last minute we have.
We always said, for a number of years I had a partner, and we always said that if we were going to be successful, we would have to be able to close the door and walk away from the business, and for the business to not only remain as successful as it was, but to improve after we left. And that is truly the definition of success. We started with nothing, and when I walk away from this, the business can continue to increase. We believe we're number one in our market niche, and we are continuing to gain market share, and we continue to expand into other areas where we do a lot of horizontal integration every year, and we also do a lot of vertical integration every year. We want to make everything in our own house. That's truly local manufacturing. And we've accomplished quite a bit over the years. We make, even our fasteners we make now. So that is the definition of success. From a legacy standpoint, if the culture that we put out there is a good and a healthy culture, that is really exciting. If people enjoy coming to work and make careers there and not just jobs, we've built something.
I'm going to quote one of my favorite talk show hosts. You've said it all, Tom. We covered a lot of ground. You've done it all. You've done a lot in your business career. We really appreciate you sharing your experiences and your wisdom. And we thank you all for listening. Thank you, Jake Still, for being here today. Thank you, Ann John Arado. Everyone have a great week, and we'll see you next week on Founders Forum.
Thanks very much, Mark.